Aspiring teachers in Australia can't pass basic literacy exams. No sweat, neither can their future students. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, that unique program which keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses all around the world. Today, we're discussing a recent talk given by Heather MacDonald, where college students claimed that at least 20% of women are raped at college, plus a big win for parents in North Carolina, where a student survey asked kids about their sexual orientation, and we have students responding to Bernie Sanders praising Cuba. But we start with the future of teachers and their inability to pass basic literacy tests. Yes, it's true, and it's not just Australia, right? When I think about the level of knowledge that my junior and senior education, my English majors are pretty poor. They don't know anything about history. They can't read complicated text. Putting a piece of poetry, a little bit of Milton, a little bit of Shakespeare, in front of a senior English major without any context, yikes, right?
I've been there to witness it.
But the education majors, forget it. I'm not convinced the typical education major, I mean, there's some really good ones. I mean, you were one, right? The very good education majors are as good as any students we've had, right? And they're committed to a profession that's not going to make them a lot of money. However, it's also a filling ground. It's kind of a dumpster fire for people who fail out of every other subject. I'm not sure you could put a serious passage of Dr. Seuss on a piece of paper without context, and many of the education majors would get it.
And the Dr. Seuss is going to be the books that are read by the elementary education majors. And here's the thing, come at me with it, but I've been in classrooms with those who are elementary education majors, and they could not piece together a simple sentence if they tried.
No, and I think Australia's got the right example. They're actually giving aspiring teachers tests. You know, and these tests, we're going to share the test with you and actually test you at home to see how you would have done as we move forward. But the tests are not that complicated. That's the thing. It's not asking them serious stuff. It's not asking them to do, even long division, which, is a third grade skill. We're not even asking them to do that.
Yeah, what they have, it's called the federal government's Literacy and Numeracy Test for Initial Teacher Education. And this test, it has simple questions involving punctuation marks or identifying the correct spelling of words and finding the meaning of these words and phrases. And they struggle mightily with it. I mean, we need to do this in the U.S. too. The initial test to get into the education program is a math test and an English test. And it's quite simplistic, but people still fail. So should we give the test now? Because I can't wait anymore.
Let me say this too. I think we should get, after they do the student teaching, after they complete the coursework or maybe before they're allowed to student teach, you give them another test, right?
Well, they do. It's the subject area, though. They don't have to do.
Yeah, but somebody needs to do it besides the education departments.
Oh, that's good.
Who are utterly unreliable. All right, but here, without further ado, are you smarter than an Australian wannabe teacher? Jennifer sets goals and works towards them with perseverance. Which word is closest in meaning to the word perseverance? Patience, resilience, fervor, or persistence?
All right, mark your answer at home. We'll do the answers at the end.
All right.
Question number 2. Which one of the following words correctly completes a sentence? The preparation for each dance was always blank because Mrs. Kinsella upheld such exacting standards. Everyone complained, but the results spoke for themselves. So the preparation for each dance was always interim, onerous, injudicious, impracticable. And a hint to all of them out there, if they watched My Healthy Republic the other week, I used the correct term in my...
You did. Yes, you did. I remember.
In my title.
Which of the following words are spelled incorrectly? Address, peculiar, engraved, and mechanical. And I think by pronouncing them, it should be obvious.
Well, you have to... For some of them, they're going to have to look on the screen.
I think so.
Number 4, a word has been left out of the following sentence. Select the word that correctly completes the sentence. My colleagues who teach other subject areas may well be interested in making Science Week part of their blank education as well. So are they making Science Week part of their students, with 0 apostrophes, student apostrophe S, students apostrophe, or students' apostrophe S?
You know how when you read Spanish, but you're not a Spanish speaker?
Español.
And how utterly confusing the exclamation points are? Yeah, like upside down, right?
Yeah.
If you have no Spanish background,
then you're like,
right?
It looks like mumbo jumbo. Yeah.
That's what the American college graduate looks at when they see an apostrophe. The apostrophe for an apostrophe S, it is as confusing to them as the Cyrillic alphabet would be if they were trying to read Russian. That's how pathetic our education
When I saw that
system is.
question, it is I think it's my number one pet peeve in the English language.
It's pretty
is when
high.
people do this incorrectly, I
can't
lose
stand it when they, and of course all the transgenderisms ruin this too. I can't stand it when you have a singular a noun and a plural verb, right? But now that's considered, now when you tell somebody there's one person they can't be a they, then they'll come back and hit you with a Title IX complaint because you misgendered them.
Exactly. And the final question, number 5. A word has been left out of the following sentence. Which one of the following words best completes the sentence? Unfortunately, we have had blank responses than we were expecting. Unfortunately, we have had less responses, fewer responses, smaller responses, insufficient responses.
All right.
Mark your answer. Drum roll, please. The answers are...
Well, they're a little bit, unless you remember all the way back.
Oh, I remember all the way back. They should have marked them.
Onerous, and grieved students, and fewer. But this is literally, to me, a middle school test. Mm-hmm. It's not a high school test. It's not a freshman, sophomore, and college test. It's not a college graduate test. It shouldn't be the test you give people who think they're ready to enter a classroom to teach themselves. This is a big embarrassment. And again, before we were too hard on the Aussies, this is just as bad here and everywhere else. And it goes back to what we said many times, Katie. We aren't preparing teachers to actually teach subjects. We are simply preparing them to be good, woke babysitters. That's it.
That's pretty much. I just want.
Does it really matter where the S comes in babysitters? Right, if you're being sufficiently woke.
It does. I just want to give a shout out, Mr. Kruger, 7th and 8th grade English class, who taught me the proper use of the apostrophe.
Hey, I had, as a sophomore in high school, brother Joseph Shavala, CSC, St. Edward High School, Lakewood, Ohio.
Shout out.
And he used to be, everybody was terrified of him. He was this 4-foot-tall brother, and he would just stand there and he would talk very meekly. But he just watched everything.
So you could see him right in the eye.
We got drilled every single day on grammar. We had all of this stuff again and again and again. Best thing that ever happened to me.
I believe it.
It was.
Just so everyone's aware, the questions that are being struggled with in this Aussie test involve math as well. And one of the questions the students struggled most with was in finding an annual income based off of weekly pay.
Right.
You know why? Because they didn't know how many weeks there were in a given year.
Let me repeat that.
Same number of weeks.
Before they could even get to the math that they couldn't do correctly, they couldn't even approach the question because none of them knew how many weeks were in a year.
Somehow that's going to be racist,
Calendars
sexist.
are white supremacy.
It is white supremacy.
Calendars
this is true.
are white supremacy. Next story, please.
Okay, well, on the college campus where we hear about this white supremacy, we hear a lot about race and gender and all the things that are happening. And we have Heather MacDonald, who is an attorney. She's a political activist. I'm going to give her accolades because she's known for speaking out on victimization, rape culture, immigration. She has written a book called The Diversity Delusion, How Race and Gender Pandering Corrupt the University and Undermine Our Culture. She's attended Yale, Cambridge, and Stanford. This woman is well educated, she's well spoken, and she means to help educate those on the college campus. But of course, her facts go against their beliefs. So what happens when she goes to speak?
Yeah, we're going to take a look at this video in a minute. I just want to point out that she is really, really good at holding her fire. They're screaming and they're yelling and they're engaging. And it's like you said, it's all complete feelings, right? Listen to her try to prevent, which are accurate statistics. There's no arguing from these kids that the statistics are wrong.
Yeah, so she most recently spoke at Colgate University, which is a liberal arts college in Hamilton, New York. And the part of the speech we're going to show you is about the protests from the students who filled the auditorium, and you'll see one of them in there. They came in with headphones and little signs, and they were supposed to be listening to like radical viewpoints during MacDonald's speech, not even listening to what she's saying, but she is talking specifically about rape culture on the college campus.
A 20% rate of criminal victimization is beyond anything any society has experienced. Our most violent city, Detroit, when you look at all 4 of the FBI's violent index felonies, that includes murder, rape, aggravated assault, and robbery. All 4 of those combined gets you a violent felony rate of 2%. So 20 to 25% is a catastrophe. Now, if that were in fact going on, because I believe that females are smart, their mothers are smart, I would think that mothers, knowing that this is going on and that there would be word of mouth about the sexual holocaust that awaits females if they go to a college campus, there would have been a stampede years ago to create single-sex schools where girls can study in peace. The opposite is the case. Every year, the stampede of females trying to get into college grows greater and greater, to the point that now females are a majority across the country. Thank God.
Yeah, and you can just see how juvenile this is. First of all, that's what you get for naming a college after toothpaste. Number one. Number two, I've made this point many, many times. Do you see how furious these young girls on college? Almost all of them were girls. The young girls who were protesting Heather MacDonald outright about the idea that women, this fake idea that 25%, if 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 American girls were being raped on a college campus, it would be a Holocaust, and there would be incredible intervention by the government. Fact is that it's liberals and progressives who run these universities. So let's pretend that these fake statistics are right. The left wants these statistics, right? They've made them up. Feminists have made these statistics up to make it seem like women require all this special attention, women's studies programs, gender programs, women's buildings set aside for women, all that perks that come with being a victim. So these statistics were largely invented by feminists. And the irony of that is that these are the same feminists who want to protect women from rape, but will fight to the death to get boys and girls locker rooms.
And the way we just talked about in Australia, how they don't understand the basic literacy exams, you could tell based on what she was saying, they didn't comprehend what she was saying about statistics comparing Detroit and how there would be, if the rape culture actually was what they claim it to be, people would be, like, women would not be going to college, mothers would have pulled their kids. They don't understand anything until the end when they're like, and women make up more students in the colleges. Woo, yeah,
right.
Woo, praise God, absolutely.
Right, it's simple.
That's the only, that's the trigger point where,
right.
Oh yes, we've heard this before. This is where we cheer.
Right,
that's all they can do.
Now, to point out that women outnumber boys, that becomes a celebration point. This is nothing more than a pep rally for stupid girl power. I think of that stupid band from the '90s.
Oh, don't you dare!
The Spice
How
Girls, right?
Dare you? I knew
Women
you.
Power. I had a colleague.
No. Girl power.
Girl power. I had a colleague in the 90s when I was teaching who was really into them, right?
Why wouldn't you be into
And
Spice
she used
Girls?
to walk around and singing the Spice Girls about feminine empowerment.
I don't even want to comment right now because you hurt my feelings.
Okay, yeah.
Sporty Spice.
Maybe we got to get you.
Girl power.
Maybe we got to get you signed up for Colgate. A couple courses of Colgate.
I could use. Okay, but there was another video clip we want to show because clearly this is when the female students, this is what they came for. This is their bread and butter. They questioned MacDonald about rape accusations and all women being believed.
Can you ask, how does it feel for a woman to know she's not going to be believed? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that she should prove her case. That there are procedures that have been developed over centuries to good luck if any of you are accused of a crime and you are not given the right of cross-examination, you're not given the right of a lawyer. You may right now trust the administration to follow you, but you may be in situations where you are going to be very grateful for due process protections, because not all accusations in any area of the law are always correct.
Yeah, and she makes the obvious point, right? That the very laws that you trample down are the ones that you may need. I love that passage from A Man for All Seasons by Bolt, the playwright, where you have St. Thomas More talking about the law, right? The protections of the law. And his fiery young son-in-law, Roper, wants to tear down the laws to do God's will in the country. And More turns on him and says, and what are you going to do, Mr. Roper, when the laws are all down and the devil set free? The very laws that you wanted to cut down in favor of your cause will be the laws that swallow you up. And these poor, stupid little children aren't reading books like that in their English classes anymore. What they're reading is fake rape statistic stories from feminists. Right?
And listening to the Spice Girls.
And listening to the Spice Girls, yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to go down to the Charlotte area, because at the Charlotte Mecklenburg schools in North Carolina, there was a survey that was given out to the entire school district. And this school district has 175 schools from K through 12, 148,000 students we're talking about. They got a survey about sexual orientation and gender identity. And the superintendent, Ernest Winston, had to write a letter and post it on Facebook stating that after he received some of the feedback from the parents about this climate survey, which schools all do this climate survey, that they had started administering this back on February 10th. They're going to pull that survey back because of the 3 questions that they had added specifically about gender identity and sexual orientation.
Yeah, and what explains this story is the last story. How do these girls come to believe that they're all raped, right? And how do they come to believe that somebody making a sexual joke or some boy comes up to you and flatters you on your hair or the cut of your dress, that becomes a kind of sexual assault? And it's these campus climate surveys. Mm-hmm. That's what not statistics, not real investigations, not serious research and data. No. How do you feel? And from the moment little young women step foot on college campus, they're being told what victims they are. That if they're not raped, literally, they have been metaphorically raped by the patriarchy, by Western culture, right? The entirety of this. So these young girls are groomed to have this persecution. It's almost a badge of honor. If you're a feminist on a college campus and you haven't been actually harassed some way, your bona fides aren't there. So they're finding with all kinds of new ways to call themselves victims now, because that's what gets the cookie.
Exactly.
That's what gets the cookie.
All right. Well, in Winston's letter, he began by stating that the district annually administers a survey to our students in grades 5 through 13, because at a lot of the schools, I was questioning grade 13, but you can earn an associate's degree. So it's actually adults. The survey asks a range of questions on student efficacy, persistence is back. Safety, belonging, and bullying. Though it is a requirement that CMS administer the survey, it is voluntary for students, and we'll get to that part. A student may refuse to take the survey. Likewise, students may skip any question in the survey they do not understand or choose not to answer. This year, 3 questions were added asking students about their gender identity or sexual orientation. The intent of their addition was to inform central office resource deployment to continue efforts to make our schools safer and more welcoming for all students. And the district had to come back even after the superintendent put this letter out and say that, actually it wasn't the 5th graders who got the sexuality stuff. It was only the 6th graders and higher.
Yeah, and you see how the diversity machine feeds itself, right? That you give these surveys after scaring kids to death at every level of school, elementary, middle, high school, scaring kids to death about how they're persecuted, if they're in any way, shape, or form different, they need to have coming out parties, they need to be celebrated for having an idea that's not a traditional idea. And then you feed them these surveys, right, which reifies that, hey, I'm different and no one loves me because of my difference. And that fuels the need to bring on more programs, more textbooks and exercises, more diversity officers and psychologists and social emotional wellness learners, educators to pander to all of this special interest stuff, all at the expense of actual schoolwork.
So to wrap this story up, there were people who wrote Facebook comments claiming that I'm a student at this school and we were forced to take it. Mm-hmm. One person said my teacher wouldn't let me work on homework until she saw that the survey was completed and answered honestly.
How about that? Teachers who are usually pulling teeth you got a poor kid who wants to do her damn homework.
Yep.
Not until you fill out your sex survey.
And then other posts said that at some schools, again, there's 175 schools, some kids were given opt-out letters from the survey to take home. Others say the school did not. But according to Winston, all the responses are going to be the ones already recorded will be erased.
Hey, kid, you will not be allowed to eat your Brussels sprouts until you eat your cookies. Do you understand me?
Moving on to Cuba.
Cuba.
Why not? We have a story from Cuba and the great students talking about Bernie Sanders.
You know, it's one of those clips. Eduardo Nerrit shows up on campus, sticks a microphone under dumb kids' faces, and says to them, "Hey, we have a candidate running for president, considering the presidency, a very famous political figure, who is now praising dictators, who is now, without mentioning Cuba, without mentioning the country, without mentioning the politicians, we got one of our candidates for president who is now extolling dictators, talking about how dictators can get things done. They've done some wonderful things. And of course, every single student, everyone, assumes it's Trump. And guess what happens when they find out it's Bernie Sanders, not Trump?
What?
They go to defending dictators. They were condemning, when it was Trump, they were condemning dictators. The minute they found out it was Bernie Sanders, well, some of those dictators are pretty good.
Well, he's my bro, though. Bernie's my bro.
And cue that beautiful footage.
Would you be surprised if I told you that it was actually Bernie Sanders who made this remarks, and he made the remarks about Cuba? Does that surprise you at all?
I mean, in some ways, but not a lot.
I'll also add, I'm less surprised now that I know it's Cuba, because I do know that they have really strong public health policies, actually more successful initiatives than the U.S. in some cases. So I don't think it's completely unreasonable to acknowledge the successes of that regime, even if there are human rights abuses.
No, that seems like a pretty reasonable thing to say.
It doesn't concern me any more than I'm concerned about Trump.
And that's the way you end it, right? Yeah, okay, so Bernie, who's my guy, is praising a Cuba, and let's be clear here. When they talk about human rights abuses, these little young snowflakes have no idea what it was like to be one of the gusanos, right? One of the worms who the Castro and Che would imprison in their killing fields, they would torture their families, what it's like to be the women in white, right, who are standing up for their faith and their culture in a communist world that has appreciation for none of this stuff. The number of dissidents who have been starved to death, beaten to death in Cuban prisons, they have no problem with that, because they're just human rights abuses. Hey, it's great. You might be beaten to death at your 30th birthday because you don't agree with the government. Hey, but at least you can read.
That's exactly right.
Hey, you got your hemorrhoids taken care of, free from the government, right?
Their literacy rates are probably better than Australia's.
Well, and the other thing people point out that's absolutely correct too. Before the communists ever took over in Cuba, Cuba was the one Latin American country where literacy rates were really, really
it was about
high.
80%, I think.
80%.
I've read stats
so it's
on
not
that.
like the communists came in and changed it that much. They just didn't destroy it. And as many people have pointed out, why did the communists emphasize reading? So that you could be properly indoctrinated into Marxism. I'd like to ask those college snowflakes. It's great that they can read. Are you also okay with the fact that they're only allowed to read Marxist propaganda? Is that okay with you? But then again, think about where they are. College campuses where Marxist propaganda is most of what they read anyway.
Well, and you got to remember, this almost exact same video happened just 4 short years ago when they were asked on the college campus, do you like Castro or do you like Trump?
Do you have a more favorable opinion of Fidel Castro or Donald Trump?
That's a tough question.
I mean, right now, I don't think Donald Trump is very good, and I know that Fidel Castro has done some good things for the world.
I would say, like, at this very moment, I have a better opinion of Fidel Castro.
I feel that he really changed Cuba in so many ways that really made possibilities for the Cuban people nearly endless.
Endless possibility. That's why all those American Latinos, are getting in bathtubs and risking shark-infested water to sail to Cuba to emigrate, isn't that?
Yeah,
So that's exactly right.
I think I recognize those people because it's been about 4 years. So, like, now they are field organizers in Bernie's camp. So that
Well, here's
it makes
the other
sense.
thing.
I thought they looked familiar.
If dictators can do good things, and Donald Trump is a dictator, let's hear what you got to
Stop
say.
it.
Let's talk about the strong things that Trump did as a dictator. And the irony is that A, he's not a dictator, and B, he's actually done things for people. Look at Black and Hispanic unemployment rates.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you over here. Could you speak up on that?
Don't let the facts get in the way of everything else.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up Wednesday. If you like the show, please help us keep others educated by sharing the episode with your family and your friends on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Parler, or just use the good old-fashioned electronic mail.
If you're a fan of the show and have a business, consider advertising with us so you can keep your business from these little socialist kids coming up. Visit freedomproject.com/advertise, freedomproject.com/advertise to learn more. And for Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie, Spice Girl. She would be Shorty Spice. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.